Don, can you just start by telling us something about this conductorless chamber orchestra that we have at NEC? How did that come about, and what are the models nationally that it's following?
Well, it comes from my own experience with the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra, with whom I played for 30 years full-time, and now I play occasionally with. And they are a conductorless chamber orchestra modeled after a Russian orchestra that was conductorless in the 30s in Moscow.
And how does it work? How does it work musically, and how does it work democratically?
Okay.
How is leadership discovered and nurtured within that group of musicians?
Here at NEC, we do play together for an entire year, so we do 4 or 5 concerts together, so we get used to each other. People will develop leadership skills in terms of physically leading with their sound, and they're allowed to participate in the ideas of the music making. Ultimately, I kind of reserve the right to be the arbiter of how things are going to go, but if someone has a good point, sometimes I'll go with it. I like to hear new ideas and fresh ideas about pieces. So it encourages participation from everyone, and all the concertmasters and leaders are rotated.
You would not normally associate a chamber orchestra as being part of a Mahler festival. You normally expect the orchestra to be at least 120 people strong. So you've come up with 2 programs which I think are really fascinating. The one on October 19, which is about Mahler and his contemporaries, and then an equally amazing one on November 17 when it's Mahler the arranger. Well, let's talk about the program on October 19, Mahler and his contemporaries. And you've chosen some really fascinating contemporaries. In particular, you've got the Josef Such.
Well, the Such, I needed a centerpiece to the program. And the Such relationship with Mahler is marginal. They weren't close colleagues. But Such, of course, in that symphony was very influenced by Mahler. Mm-hmm. That symphony being written for the death of Dvorak and of his daughter, who was Such's wife. But there was, for a while, there was some speculation that Mahler was using a piano piece of Such's as inspiration for the 10th Symphony. And that has been since discounted as not being true. But we know that they were obviously aware of each other. Such had a big reputation, not only as a composer, but as the first violinist in the Czech Quartet, which he played with for many years. Yeah. And then I chose Robert Fuchs, who was Mahler's teacher at the Vienna Conservatory. And Fuchs taught harmony and counterpoint.
And what style of music did he write?
Well, he wrote kind of light Viennese, I would call it kind of fluff. Brahms actually liked his music. He was one of the few living composers or contemporaries that Brahms actually praised. He wrote a lot of serenades. In fact, he was known in German as the Serenading Fox, the Serenading Fox, because everything turned out to be a serenade, even though he didn't write other pieces. And I found one of the serenades, which is, I think, actually the best one, was actually written during the year that Mahler studied with him. So I thought that would be appropriate to throw it on. See if the audience hears any Mahler in that. But what's very interesting is when the Second Symphony Mahler's Second Symphony was premiered in Vienna, one of the critics wrote that he heard many Fuchsisms in the piece.
In the Second Symphony?
Yes, he said, I heard many Fuchsisms. Okay. So this was in the public consciousness then of this relationship, which we don't think about very much these days. So next I chose another contemporary, Franz Schreker. Schreker was a great opera composer, but the operas came slightly later after his time with Mahler. Their closest relationship was that Schreker in 1907 started the Philharmonic Chorus, and he directed the Philharmonic Chorus until 1920. Well, the Philharmonic Chorus provided the chorus for Mahler's 3rd and 8th symphonies, as well as Zemlinsky's Psalm 23 and Schoenberg's Gerlinger. So it was a very important part of the musical scene in Vienna at that time. And I found 2 early pieces which I know from earlier days, which fit my group and which were written respectively in 1900 and 1901. And you can hear little hints of Mahler in there for sure.
Okay.
And they're very little interesting.
And then there's Webern. Did Webern know Mahler?
Oh yes, yes.
Were they as close as with Schoenberg?
Not as close, but he knew him, and actually became a wonderful Mahler conductor in his later years. But yes, he knew him. See, Schoenberg didn't like Mahler until he heard the Third Symphony, and then he was transformed, and then Mahler was it. And of course, the students were all involved in this very small circle. So this piece of Webern's, Long Zombassats, it was originally a string quartet. It's been amplified for string orchestra. And it was...
and it's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous.
9 minutes of what I would describe as Mitschlag.
Yeah, it's Mitschlag. He apparently was young love at that time. He'd fallen in love with a girl during the summer, very influenced by Schoenberg's Transfigured Night, which was composed 2 years earlier.
Yes.
It was written under Schoenberg's tutelage. Schoenberg told him to concentrate on writing small ensembles before he tried big orchestras. And it came to light in 1961 when the family turned over some personal papers to the archives in Vienna. So we're happy to have that in the mix.
I think people will be absolutely fascinated by both programs and the choices that you've made. It's
Well,
pretty terrific to have the chamber orchestra as part of this.
Thank you. We're really proud to be part of it.